Hello, folks, and welcome again to another edition of BS Opinions. And we are a Brody-less BS Opinions today, so we are missing the B of our B and S. Uh, However, we are carrying on. I'm doing the show solo today. Uh, Brody had a family engagement he could not get out of, so family comes first. So we're gonna try to do this solo. He is the tech guy mostly in terms of our show, so hopefully we don't mess anything up. We meaning me. Mess anything up or anything go astray. I think I have everything set up, so we're gonna dive in and we're gonna talk mostly about the economy today. We're gonna go through. Evergrande and the financial fallout that could ensue in multiple kinds of markets in the coming months because of that. We are also going to talk about the States Reform Act, which is the marijuana legalization or decriminalization bill that's moving forward. It's kind of in its beta stages right now, if you could say. But we'll take a look at that and discuss it. We're also going to look at the end. We're going to get into some political stuff. We're going to talk about the Rittenhouse Trial and the potential fallouts from that. That's going to be more of the opinion side of the BS Opinions show that we do, or I guess I do right now. You're going to get to hear a lot of specific things that get covered up typically. Typically he can take over the conversation when I need a drink of water or something. So let's dive right into it. And we're going to talk about Evergrande. So Evergrande, if you don't know, is the largest real estate company in China. They handle the primary both housing developments and real estate in China. They also have their hands in many different pots. They have their hands in, I believe, pharmaceuticals, electric parts for cars, etc. They stand to be about 2% of China's overall GDP, which is a significant portion. The biggest thing here is, and we've discussed it before a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth in this show, that they are incredibly in debt. They have interest payments and payments on their debts due continuously over the next couple of years. So one of the problems with them is that if you just take a look at that property market in general in China, 8 of the 10 most indebted property developers are based in China. They have 300 billion in liabilities. Evergrande does, 19 billion of which are bonds. And they still have outstanding payments due. They have another payment due actually this month, which is the 255 million due on December 28th. They've been making their payments so far, but it's typically because they're being bailed out by other financial groups. Most recently, Citibank was the financial institution that paid the interest on their debt this previous time. It's not looking good for them. The idea of bankruptcy has been touted several times, and they're expected to default on their debt, which would send ripple effects through the economy, not just China's economy, but through our economy as well. And because of that, they've imposed these three red line rules in China now. So the three red line rules, I'll read them to you, is 70% ceiling on liabilities to assets, excluding advance proceeds from projects sold on contract. So what that essentially is saying that the debt asset ratio is the total amount of debt versus the total amount of assets, right? So they're saying that they're imposing a rule that in the future, property real estate companies cannot have their debt cannot exceed more than 70% of their assets, as a protection against them potentially defaulting and bad practices. The second restriction that they're imposing is that there's a 100% cap on net debt to equity. Uh, Essentially, it's also referred to as a gearing ratio, which is the amount of funding in a business that is capital versus debt. So essentially, what they're saying here is that there's the amount of capital on the net debt. Essentially, the amount of capital has to be equal to the amount of the debt when it comes to the funds that they're spending within the company, the funds that they're taking out for future ventures and etc. The final thing that they're implementing is the cash short term borrowing ratio of at least one. This is kind of the most uh, difficult one to understand. If the other ones were easy to understand, basically the liquidity, right? So you're operating cash, the cash that you have in your business at any time to pay for things, uh, cannot be less than 100% of its debt. So this means that businesses have a ratio of 1 to 1 because they can pay off. The idea is that they have to have enough cash on hand at all times to be able to pay off all of their debt within 1 year's time. So you have a one account in terms of money ratio 100% to pay off 100% of the debt in 1 year. So one pay 1 year. Uh, Now those all seem like rational things to do in terms of regulation. However, the concern is that, especially in somewhere like China, you have Xi Jinping consolidating power currently, passing historical reforms to cement his like legacy and position in China and in Chinese history, just like Mao and Deng before him. He's the only third leader of China to do that. So this is clearly a man who is focused on legacy, focused on consolidating power, and I think he will go beyond these reforms and use the potential crash of Evergrande and the crash of the housing market within China to further push controls on the market and centralize the economy. Um, if you don't know, the history of China is that all of China is communist, but the the coastal lands is set up as an economic development zone, where essentially they practice capitalism, which is why when you go to China, all the major cities and all the population is on the coast, and central China is just huge rural farmlands and a whole lot of nobody in the rocky areas and desert areas. Um, there's not a lot of population distribution in terms of the area. So they those economic zones, they practice capitalism, and they in China they believe in a philosophy where capitalism is seen as a step through to communist utopianism. I think Xi is trying to find his own way to push the country more towards communism and out of that capitalist stage, because they currently see themselves as in the capitalist slash communist stage of their future communist utopia. Uh, we've talked about Evergrande, but Evergrande is not the only company that's actually in trouble right now there in terms of the realty market. There's also Kasia. Kasia is the second most in debt realtor in the world, or in China at least. In Kasia, it's interesting because they've already actually defaulted on their debt once. In 2015, they were the first to do that, and it looks like they're in trouble again. Uh, uh, Evergrande, and Kasia has most of its offshore debt. It has the most offshore debt of any Chinese developer, and Evergrande, and after Evergrande, and creditors have pledged to help them. As a coupon, Kasia has a coupon payment totaling 59 million due uh, Thursday and Friday, which I think they paid it. This was of this week. They or they will pay it. I don't know if they have. They have a 30-day grace period. We saw that with Evergrande as well. Evergrande, they've been making their payments almost to the hour on the deadline. Essentially, people have been coming to bail them in at the last minute. Developers, including Evergrande and Kasia, have also been they've been looking in different ways in which they can raise capital to pay off those debts. They're selling assets in China, trying to rapidly raise cash for expenditure. There's a British electric motor maker under the name of Sedieta. I believe that's how you pronounce it. They said, this Thursday that it is acquiring the electric powertrain company E-Traction, yeah, from Evergrande Automotive. It's a deal that's supposed to be about 2 million euros. I don't know roughly the translation of cash for that, but probably somewhere within the $4 million ish range, I'd say. Not a huge dent in their debt, but they're trying to find money any which way. But it doesn't look like they're probably going to be able to make it anytime soon. Now, one of the problems with this, the major thing someone would ask is, okay, well, China, their real estate market looks like it's about to default, about to crash. So what? Well, all those they're very linked into the world economy. You see a lot of the investments that go into these real estate groups from abroad come from the United States. You have BlackRock and HSBC, which is Bank of America, USBS. They were among the largest buyers of the debt of Evergrande in the past year. So they're buying hard into Evergrande. Uh, BlackRock, it says here from Reuters, it's added 31.3 million notes of Evergrande's debt between January and August of 2021, pushing its stakes to the company of 1% of the assets in its 1.7 billion Asian high yield bond fund, according to Morningstar. So essentially, the ripples of the potential default of Evergrande could be felt across the globe, especially here in the United States when you have all these you have other realty groups like BlackRock, and you have all these different kinds of banks that are tied to it, and they're equating it. A lot of people have equated it to the Lehman Brothers failure back in the last recession, the housing market bubble popping back then, the economic turmoil, as you know, wasn't just limited to the United States. It was felt worldwide, and in Greece they were particularly hit hard. We can all remember the political upheaval and riots that came from there, and how the German government and the EU had to essentially help bail them out. Um, Now, HSBC, which is Bank of America, it also says here under Reuters, increased its position in the company by 40% through July, according to Morningstar. UBS increased its position to 25% through May, the latest data available in Funded Trackers database. So you have all these financial institutions in the United States tied to this market, and if it goes belly up, which it looks like it's about to, that can spell big ripple effects. You're going to see, even more economic downturn here. So you should prepare for that. There's all you're going to see a dramatic probably dip in the housing market here as well. I know the housing market is increasing right now, and has been increasing over the past couple of years. I've been looking at the value of my property. It's shot up. I've definitely felt it in the property taxes. Um, they But those property values are probably about to shift downward. Those buying notes are probably about to shift downward pretty significantly. So they say it's a seller's market. It won't be for long. So just be aware of that. There's also implications into the crypto market. So there's specifically you have this crypto known as Tether. So Tether, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially like a U.S. dollar standard of cryptocurrency. It's designed to be what's called a stable coin. So yeah, Brody's more of an expert on cryptocurrency than me. He's a bit of a savant in that way. I recommend you definitely check out his channel. I think he posted just a video last week on new cryptocurrencies and exchanges and etc. So definitely check that out. You can just YouTube search him, Brody Stringer. He'll come up pretty fast. But I'm going to try to explain Tether in the best way possible. So Tether is essentially a stable coin. So stable coins, the idea of stable coins is that they're supposed to be stable, and they're not supposed to fluctuate in price wildly. The idea is that Tether is attached to the valuation of the dollar. So the dollar goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit, but it roughly remains the same. It remains the dollar. Now, the idea is that Tether, there's two types of ways that certain debt institutions and debt instruments are funded through the United States. You have typically treasury bills, and then you have commercial paper. So a treasury bill is defined as a short-term U.S. government debt obligation backed by Treasury Department with a maturity of 1 year or less. So they're short-term obligations that are paid off very quickly. You could think of this almost as dollars, almost actual money, which makes sense. Treasury bill, right? Uh, uh, Conversely, you have commercial paper, and commercial paper is something completely different. Commercial paper is defined as a money market security issued by a large corporation to obtain funds to meet short-term debt obligations, for example, payroll, and is backed only by an issuing bank or company promise to pay the face amount on the maturity date specified on the note. So essentially, it is an agreed upon loan that is taken out, and these treasury bills, they're typically like they're like $1,000 like issued notes that are issued out, and you take those, and that's what they use to invest on that debt or work with that debt. The commercial paper is a more risky term of borrowing. Uh, you think of money market security issued by a large corporation, so you're going through primarily large U.S. corporations as opposed to straight from the United States Treasury. Now, the the reason I bring this up is because Tether is they did a look into it, and Tether was trying to tout that it was backed by the U.S. dollar. That's why it's a stable coin. It's most backed by the U.S. dollar and it's specifically under Treasury bills is what they were stating. It turns out that only about 2.6% of Tether is backed by Treasury bills, and the vast majority of it is backed by commercial paper. Now, the thing with that is all that commercial paper is loans taken out by corporations, and where is it going? Surprise, surprise, it's going into the realty market in China. It's going into holdings in China. So essentially, Tether is being propped up by money, by commercial paper, debt instruments that are being used to essentially fund and help a market that might actually default and crumble within China. And it's going to look very bad for them, and it's going to look very bad on Tether, and those debt instruments that they have are not going to be very desirable in terms of the market that they're in that realty market. So essentially what this means is that Tether, most of the cryptocurrencies, they fluctuate. If there's a bad day on the market, you'll see them go down, you'll see them go up on a good day, et cetera, et cetera. You might see them jump pretty high here, and you might also see Tether take a sharp decline. Now, the dangerous part of that is that Tether, since it's tied to the idea and valuation of the US dollar, in a sense, through the crypto market, you might see a sharp devaluation of the dollar. How sharp that is, I don't know, but it's potential. And if there's a devaluation of the dollar, you're looking at increase into inflation, and we're already in a situation of hyperinflation, so that could get out of hand as well. Essentially, what we're looking at here is Tether commercial paper investments essentially equal Chinese debt ownership. Thus, a default would equal a nosedive of Tether, which could also cause inflation and further harm the economy. Those are just a few ways that the default of Evergrande and the collapse of the Chinese housing market that seems inevitable might also drive our current economic situation, which is at a low, into a further, even deeper low. And it also doesn't seem like the Biden administration or Congress seem to be paying attention to it or really care. Um, this is one of those things that it's a problem that's systemic and going to be painful for everybody, and nobody's looking at it until it is going to be on their doorstep. So it's wise to just be aware of that, and that potential economic downturn is coming, and to be wise with your crypto investments, be wise with your stock investments, and take a look out for that. Now we're gonna move on from that to the States Reform Act. So if you haven't heard, Republicans are actually kind of in the beta stages of forming this bill that they plan on putting through in Congress called the States Reform Act. Essentially, it's led by Republican Nancy Mace from South Carolina. It would federally reschedule marijuana and create a regulatory scheme. This is from Forbes. The draft legislation would federally reschedule marijuana from the list of controlled substances and would impose a 3.75 excise tax on cannabis sales. So essentially, it's legalization at the federal level, in the way that it's going to be, treated like alcohol and sold and monitored like that. It's going to be taxed like that. The Department of Alcohol and Tobacco, the Trade Bureau, they're expected to be the regulatory force on that. One of the big things here in the provisions of the bill, and like I said, this bill is in its early stages. It hasn't even been announced on the floor yet. It hasn't been gone through the whole process of being torn apart and put back together multiple times in committees, where a whole bunch of ugly things and vax mandates and stuff like that are probably going to try to be shoved in it. Bridges to nowhere, et cetera, et cetera. But as it stands right now, one of the main features of it as well is that people with nonviolent convictions would be eligible for not just release, it seems, but a record expungement. So you have a lot of people in for felony possession, things like that, that are no longer going to be considered really felons, and it's going to lead to I think a better situation overall. In terms of that, the overpopulation problem with prisons, and there's also and there's also restrictions on this, of course. They want to prevent youth use, so they're putting an age limit in it as of right now of 21, which makes sense. If they're going to treat this like alcohol, they're going to give it the same age requirement as alcohol and now cigarettes have. So you have that precedent since they moved up other smoking features. I they took a poll Gallup recently did, which said that like 68% of U.S. adults said that they back legalization of cannabis. And that poll was taken apparently, and this is I believe according to I believe it's according to USA Today or Reuters. That poll was taken over Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all people of different political walks. So they can't say that it's skewed one way or another. Uh, the only problem with this is that there's what I stated, which is this bill is gonna get, if it gets right on the floor, if it goes through, it's gonna get put into committee, it's gonna get torn apart and put back together, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff probably added to this that's not gonna be great. A lot of spending that probably shouldn't be put in there because they love to throw spending in, especially in under houses under Democrat control. Though certain representative or certain senators like Joe Manchin might have something to say with that. Another problem with it is that Biden for as progressively as he's progressively leftist really as he's acted in his administration. He has a history of being fairly backward and fairly behind the times when it comes to legalization. In 2010, he said, this is according to USA Today. In 2010, he said, "I still believe it's a gateway drug and legalization is a mistake." He was asked about those comments in 2019 at a town hall. There he said, if his opinion had changed, and he said, as a quote, "No, it hasn't changed." He explained that although he supports allowing states to determine their own marijuana policies, quote, "the truth of the matter is there has not been nearly enough evidence acquired as to whether or not it is a gateway drug," which it just really isn't true at this point. It's a reiteration of an argument that's been used for so long, going back to the reefer madness days and going back to the very idea and concept and development of marijuana, because just because they didn't want hemp sales to outdo paper, so they sort of tainted the view of marijuana in terms of its dangers. So it's it would be difficult for me to see him not signing this, just because it has a lot of popular backing on both sides of the aisle. I know many conservatives that are pro legalization and definitely partake, and I know, of course, many liberals that do both as well. And for he needs all the wins that he can get right now. So it would be difficult for me not to see his administration telling him, "Hey, you need to sign this. You need to get this done." One of the other expectations, though, is one of the other expectations, though, is I don't foresee this being fast tracked through. Not only do you have the Build Back Better plan spending bill going through, that probably is going to get killed, but it still has a lot of debate to go over. You also have the debt ceiling that's coming up. There's some good news. There's going to be a bloodbath over that. There is also, there's a myriad of different things that have to be gone through. They're probably going to try to take a look at voting rights assurances, things like that, more liberal agenda stuff. I expect this bill, if not for political purposes, I expect it to be pushed off closer towards the midterms, mostly because it has popular support. It would have popular support on both sides of the aisle. The main reason I see that is because, so it's like I said, it's Republicans that are actually wrote this bill and are actually like developing it, which is a big change from the war on drugs view of the Republicans. Uh, you know, the old Nancy Reagan just say no. It's kind of out the window now. I think it's definitely a move the Republicans are making to seem more like the new conservative movement, the younger conservative movement. I think that they are pivoting from being the party of just law and order to also being the party of insurance of liberty. I think they're trying to tap into that libertarian base more that they know is expanding, and I think they're trying to become the party of the middle class, the working class, which this would be fairly popular with, and with younger conservatives, it would also be very popular with. So I think they would push that off. They would want that pushed off towards the midterms, so they can tout that they were the ones that actually the party that was always anti-drug, anti marijuana. They were the party that actually came out and said, you know what, we were wrong. We recognize that we're wrong. Uh, you know we don't lack self-awareness, so we're the ones that came up with a bill to pass legalization, and we did that for you. And I think Democrats would also be down for that, because then Democrats can go around during the midterms and say that they were the administration in power that got weed legalized, and they got you know Biden was the president that got marijuana legalized. So they try to talk one up for as a win for their team. So I think it might be a wash that way. But I don't expect it to be passed anytime soon. I would look closer towards the midterms, look closer towards August, maybe anywhere between August and October. I would definitely see this as more around next fall, end of summer kind of bill that gets passed, or at least gets close. And of course, it could still not get passed, and we could be right back to the drawing board. We'll just have to see. So the final thing that we're probably going to talk about today is that the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is going through right now. So as far as it looks like, it seems like he's going to be acquitted. The defense put up a pretty good case. They kind of fumbled at the 1 yard line. They kind of by letting that evidence being put in that's not really evidence. It's just basically a dramatization, a picture of Rittenhouse holding his gun. They're trying to say that it was his weapon. This very pixelated, not sharp image of him holding his weapon in a certain way constitutes, essentially provocation, and the prosecution is trying to grasp at straws by saying, well, this very flimsy evidence that's not technically real is evidence of provocation, which means that he is guilty because he can't be self-defense if he provoked these men and then killed them. Now, that of course is all my opinion, and that's what the show is mostly about. So it's definitely a shot that they are able to convict him on that. But my guess is that you have fairly liberal and leftist members of the legacy media coming out and saying now that they expect a acquittal. You have Chris Hayes of MSNBC says that after going through the evidence, he expects an acquittal. So I think that an acquittal is forthworth. If it does not, if he's not acquitted, I expect the judge to come in and essentially it, uh, there's a there's a I believe it's a mandated verdict or something like that, but there 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 is a way where he can essentially say that he thinks that the jury is essentially wrong, and it change the verdict, or he could also potentially get a lighter sentence, or he could also there's also an appeals process, but I I don't expect it. I don't expect him to be found guilty, but there's certain aspects of the case. The judge is, this is somebody who doesn't think Kyle did anything wrong, that he acted in self defense from the evidence that I've seen presented. But, you know, just from a unbiased standpoint, I'd say that the judge does seem fairly biased, or that he would lean towards a more worldview of, say, like a Kyle Rittenhouse in that stance, just from the ringtone on his phone going off, or the certain passionate stances he's taken for bad moves by the prosecution against the defense. He's definitely I think we're going to see a positive outcome for Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't think that prison time is in his future. Uh, Now, of course, they can, if it's declared a mistrial, they would hope for a mistrial without prejudice. Uh, but the only problem with that is that there's a cultural element to it. If he's, if it's declared a mistrial, you can, the rioters, first of all, there's going to be riots probably either way. Definitely worse if he's acquitted, which he probably will be. But, there's going, I think it's going to be worse, because that if it was declared a mistrial, because then elements of the legacy media could come out and say, well, it was declared a mistrial, and once again we have no justice, and he gets away with it because he can't be prosecuted. But if it's a mistrial without you know without prejudice, or something like that, in which case he can't be tried for the same crime. So I think it's going to be a dangerous time up there in Kenosha. I think that I believe the National Guard has been deployed, so you can expect definitely a violent turn any way you draw it, probably, and you can expect probably a lot of destruction of property. And I hope everybody up there stays safe, and I hope that the best circumstances come to fruition for there. And but in terms of this show, that's pretty much all I have for you today. Brody should be back next week, in which case the show will be infinitely better because it's definitely nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and I'm sure he will have a lot of opinions, because there's also a lot of stuff going on this week, not just the Rittenhouse trial, but I'm sure many other developments that will happen. And we still got vaccine mandate stuff that's going on. The stay that was ordered this past week and also backed up. By the Fifth Circuit Court, there's a lot of stuff that's still to be talked upon, and going to come to fruition this next week. So make sure you go, like I said, check out his channel, where he talks more about crypto. He had a video up this week. It's very good if you're very interested in learning about that. Also, make sure you smash that like button, smash it like the Dems are smashing our economy with inflation by passing these spending bills. Make sure you smash that like button like that, and share, subscribe. We definitely appreciate it. Love you guys, and can't wait to be back next week. Have a good night.